this game really is a drug. And, you know, that's something I've talked about before. Multiplayer, in general, whether it's on Call of Duty or Halo or Battlefield, what makes it special is the dopamine rush, or maybe, yeah, the dopamine rush you get every time you kill someone, every time you call in a kill streak, every time you do something satisfying. The excitement of, you know, planting a bomb or defusing a bomb with seconds left on the clock. It's about the excitement and the dopamine rush to the pleasure center, and just, you know, feeling things, getting high off of the chemicals released in your brain when the brain is reacting to something positive happening in the game. Now, the problem with this is that drugs inherently are going to have negative side effects. And Call of Duty definitely does, especially if you play it too much. It'll mess with your emotions, it'll mess with your social life, it'll mess with your physical health, you know, if you're staying on the TV or the couch too long. And, you know, it's a multiplayer only, it's limited to multiplayer. Multiplayer is the drug. Things like campaigns. Campaigns in video games are pleasurable in the same way that a movie is pleasurable, in the way that it's because it's a story. But what's exciting about it is it's a story you can get completely immersed in. So, you know, you forget reality for a little while, which is really why people, you know, watch movies and have read books for as long as they have. And so it's a multiplayer only thing. And the thing you got to realize about multiplayer is that because it's a drug, you can build up a tolerance to it, just like you build up tolerance to any other drug. Just like, you know, alcoholics have to drink a whole lot more alcohol the more they've been drinking, and ultimately that's what leads to them overdosing and dying. And it doesn't really work the same way with Call of Duty, because with Call of Duty what happens is you have to work to get the, you know, to get the pleasure center rush, to get that dopamine hit. You have to work for it, right? You have to do well, which isn't the case with something like drinking. Drinking, you drink. You don't have to work for it. You just put it to your mouth and sip. You know, things like methamphetamines. You don't gotta, I mean, I guess you have to work for those in the sense that if you've been on it for long enough, you're probably bankrupt. And, you know, you have to pick up pennies on the street or whatever those people do. But what happens with Call of Duty is that, you know, you do worse when you're angry, and you do better when you're having fun. Now, and you know, that's proven, right? I think everybody understands that. Like, that's why you do so much better when you're in a party, because you're doing better because you have your friends there, and it's more fun when your friends are there. You do better when you're having fun, you do worse when you're not having fun. And the problem is, because you're going for the dopamine rush, because what's fun is the dopamine rush. And the dopamine rush becomes harder and harder to get the more you play, the more that your tolerance builds up, right? Because, you know, you get like a 50-5 gameplay. Suddenly that's the new standard. Like, you just got that fat-ass dopamine rush off of killing 50 people and only dying 5 times, calling in these kill streaks. Suddenly that's the standard. That's what makes the game fun. Now the problem is that you're not going to be able to go 50-5 every game. It's going to become harder and harder and harder to do that well, to get that dopamine rush. And so it's a vicious cycle. It becomes harder to get the dopamine rush, and when you don't have the dopamine rush, you're not having fun. The dopamine rush is what is fun about this game. Make no mistake about it. That's what you are enjoying. You're not enjoying the game itself. You're enjoying the chemicals that are released in your brain when you do well, when you get a kill, when you outplay someone, when you outsmart someone. You feel satisfied. It all comes back to that competitive urge that every human being, particularly male human beings, have had since the, you know, beginning of time. And so what the problem is it becomes harder. It's harder to do as well as you did. You know, you peak and then it's hard to hold that peak. So you stop having as much fun. And once you stop having fun, you start doing a lot worse. And then it becomes even harder to hit that dopamine rush. And so it becomes this vicious cycle. And it's just like a meth addict, you know, it's just like a meth addict. The first time you hit meth, or maybe I'm thinking of heroin, it's the highest you'll ever get. It's physically impossible to get that high again because your brain adapts to it. And so It's not that way with Call of Duty, obviously, but it's the same cycle of trying to get that high, but the more you try to get that high, the harder it gets to get there, right? Now, meth, heroin, you're fucked. You can't break that cycle. But Call of Duty, you can break that cycle. And what you got to do is just take a break from the game. Alright, and I'm sure, not everyone is addicted to the game, but if you're like me, and if you're like a lot of other COD players out there, it is a daily thing. And it does sometimes turn into a very negative cycle, where it's just like draining your life. It's having a very negative effect on your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, things like that. And so, what you got to do, if it starts getting into that cycle, and you can kind of tell, right, when you're just playing the game and you're not even having fun playing the game anymore, take a day's break, take 2 or 3 days off, and then come back, and what it does is it resets the tolerance. Your tolerance will be low, you'll start getting a lot of satisfaction out of just single kills again. And then you do that again until it reaches a point where your tolerance is way too high, and you take another break. And that'll make you a lot better at the game. And it's something I've had to learn the hard way over years of addiction to this game. This is Batman signing out.